Lock on to Sports Talk Live. I'm Nathan Osler.
And I'm Danny Erb. Be sure to tune in from 4:30 to 5 p.m. every Tuesday and Friday for the latest news in the wide world of sports.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to today's edition of Sports Talk Live. If I'm an unfamiliar voice and you're a longtime listener of this program here, that's because I am a new voice. My name is Matt Palumbo. I'm filling in for Nathan Osler and Danny Erb today, and it is my pleasure to do so. We are going to dive into the vast world that is sports. So bear with me 1 second here. We're going to hop into some NFL free agency talks, starting with breaking news out of the Minnesota Vikings earlier this afternoon, and that is that they released one of their longtime assets, one of the, I'd say at one point, even pushing top 5 receiver in the league, and that is Adam Thielen, number 19, Adam Thielen. And he was always I always liked Adam Thielen. You know, he was a good feel-good story, one of those mid-major type wide receivers, you know, comes out a gritty, hard-nosed Bill Belichick type receiver, if you know what I'm saying. You know, like he'll put his life on the line for you. But no, absolutely great receiver. But, you know, I'm not sure how old he is at this point in his career, but he's definitely getting up there, I'd say. But that is shaking up the NFL scene there a bit. Maybe some team could pick him up, maybe even the Pittsburgh Steelers. No, I don't think that would be the best option for the Steelers. But he is 32 years old, so he's still got some time. He's still got something left in the tank, in my opinion, you know? Like, he's not completely washed up here. 32 years old. I'm assuming that's a deal for cap space or something along those lines. But the Vikings, who knows? Like, they might be blowing some things up there and, you know, trying to get younger, per se. You know, they got Justin Jefferson in the receiving core, but maybe, you know, they're trying to go along the routes of drafting more receivers like they've had success with, you know, in terms of Jefferson and others. So some other free agency and contract news this offseason, and that is Derek Carr signs with the New Orleans Saints to be Jameis Winston's backup. No, I'm kidding. I'm assuming he is going to be the starter, but I would like to see some friendly competition between the two. I mean, and as much as I've been a fan of Adam Thielen, like, I feel like I have not been a fan of Derek Carr. Like, Derek Carr is a solid pro quarterback, but I don't know. He's never had that it factor for me, and maybe that's just me being a hater in this instance. But me personally, Derek Carr doesn't have it. And, you know, he has some arm talent, and maybe it's just because he hasn't been surrounded by the weapons he's needed these past few seasons. Although Devontae Adams last season, you know, I thought that's maybe when they would make the jump. And, you know, they would really – and, you know, the loss of Henry Ruggs definitely didn't help matters. And, you know, he's had a lack of weapons. But they have one of the better running games with Josh Jacobs in the backfield. I mean, their offensive line isn't fantastic, but they have a good rushing attack with Josh Jacobs, and they can build around that. So I was never impressed with the results that Derek Carr pulled out of Oakland in his time there and Las Vegas in the latter years of his tenure there. But I am intrigued to see how him in New Orleans works. You know, it's like last season seeing the New Orleans Saints be subpar as they were was a foreign thing, you know? Like, the New Orleans Saints are always perennially a great team, you know, and since the exit of Drew Brees just a few years back, like, they've struggled a bit. And I know Jameis Winston was injured last year, and, you know, it's a shame. His career hasn't quite worked out. I think he's been, you know, a talented quarterback and, you know, in my opinion, one of the more impressive seasons in NFL history, not strictly because of how good it was per se, was the year that he had 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions. Like, that is just an incredible volume of both of those statistics. Like, if you really think about it, 30 interceptions in a season is a mind-blowing number. Like, now there's 17 games in a season, but 16-game season, that's, you know, I'm no mathematician. I'm a communications media major here at the Indiana University of Pennsylvania. But, you know, it's almost 2 per game if you're playing a full 16-game season and getting 30 interceptions. But then at the same time, it's not like he was a complete bum, because he was throwing 30 touchdowns. And I don't think they made the playoffs that year, but he at least like brought some excitement to Tampa Bay. That was a couple seasons before Tom Brady made his way over to Tampa. But that was kind of a long-winded way of saying I feel bad for Jameis Winston. I think he has some talent, but he's never found himself in the right situation. And for quarterbacks in the NFL, that seems to be like a common theme. Like I think there's a lot of talented quarterbacks who have just bounced around from system to system, and it pains me to say this because I am not a fan of the Cleveland Browns even one slight bit. But Baker Mayfield, I think, is one of those quarterbacks, kind of. And, because he performed well in some games in L.A., but L.A. also was like a broken team at that point, the Rams. They had lost Matthew Stafford. They really were on the Super Bowl hangover of all Super Bowl hangovers, and they just didn't perform well at all last season. So I don't know if Baker coming in, that was a franchise-changing acquisition at the time, but, I think he at least brought some energy, and I remember watching the Nickelodeon game on Christmas Day, and he absolutely lit the whole stadium on fire. It was awesome. He slimed the defense several times, which, another random transition here, but the Nickelodeon game, I'm glad that I wish that was the thing when I was little. I think I would have even been more interested in sports than I am now if that were a thing, because that is just an awesome production. Every touchdown, there's slime on the field. Well, not actually, but on the broadcast. They have the Nickelodeon MVP, who the first ever was Mitch Trubisky, I might add. But just an absolutely marvelous production. I was in awe of it while I was watching it on Christmas with my family, and it was really cool. It was awesome. So just like I said, random segue there, but we're going to hop back into some NFL free agency. As you can see, they shouldn't have let me on this program by myself because now I can just talk about whatever I want, and there might be some interesting segues here and there, but that's fine. That's what we're about here on Sports Talk Live here on 90.1 WIUP FM. So we're going to hop into some more NFL free agency talks, mostly quarterback talk here, and then we'll hop into some World Baseball Classic because how exciting has that been? And I'm just ecstatic to see the rest of the tournament play out. USA hasn't even played yet, and I've already seen some fantastic games. So, gonna hop into the Geno Smith saga. No, there is no saga, but that man got paid. That man, I don't know the exact details of the deal right off the top of my head. Let me do some quick research. But that man got paid. He had an absolutely great season last year, and he got rewarded for it by the Seattle Seahawks. The post-Russell Wilson era is now the Geno Smith era, and I am not upset about it one bit. He's one of those, another feel-good story. Came out of West Virginia, was a high draft pick, didn't work out in New York, the New York Jets organization. And that seems to be a common theme for quarterbacks. I can't remember the last time they had a homegrown quarterback that was good or developed well. So, and some front offices just know how to develop players, and especially quarterbacks, and some do not. And the New York Jets is certainly not a team that can develop quarterbacks. Like Zach Wilson, I think has some talent. He's got something in the tank. He's got something to offer. There are quarterbacks of similar styles who have done well, but I just don't see things working out there over in the Meadowlands. But back to Geno Smith. 3 years, $75 million for Geno Smith. Contract with $40 million guaranteed, average annual salary of $25 million. I'm pretty sure that I read something last week, or maybe a few days ago, that he had only previously made about $17 million. I say only $17 million. That would be very nice. But only $17 million in his whole career up to this, and now is being paid annually $25 million. So congrats on getting that bag, Geno. He has one of the all-time iconic quotes in the NFL history. They wrote me, and I ain't right back. That's art, in my opinion. It really doesn't get much better than that, and I'm glad to see the man get paid. So another quarterback who is yet to get paid, but he certainly is searching for it, is Daniel Jones. Man, Daniel Jones wants to see, he wants all the money on the planet. And, don't get me wrong, good season last year, solid season. He went for 3,205 yards, 15 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. But if I remember correctly, he was injured for a few games. but that doesn't matter. But he wants up like over $45 million a season, I heard. And that's just, it's all, I think, coming from the Mahomes deal a few years ago. And I don't see how Daniel Jones places himself on the same pedestal as Mahomes, or like that's just a precedent. If you pay your a team star quarterback that much, then I want that much. But it's just gotten out of hand. I'm nervous for when the Steelers have to pay Kenny Pickett if he turns out to be half of what I hope he is. Like it's a nerve-wracking time. Like it's not easy to find a quarterback and lock him up for the rest of his career. And also, whenever you do that, you're going to have to sacrifice some weapons. Just look, I mean, it wasn't exactly a sacrifice, but the Kansas City Chiefs had to get rid of Tyreek Hill in order to manufacture some cap space. And they turned around and won the Super Bowl the next year. That's kind of an anomaly. But when you lose somebody of that caliber, how good is your quarterback at that point? If your quarterback doesn't have the same weapons that he did before, and you had to sacrifice that to sign him, I don't know. It's kind of a dilemma. But Daniel Jones, I think, benefits off a system more. Like I really think he thrived in Brian Dable's system a little bit more, and Saquon Barkley finally had a season where he wasn't injured and finally had a consistent run of games. So they got some chemistry together, both Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley, and that was exciting to see. But just as I mentioned, like Daniel Jones, like he hasn't taken it to the next level yet where he deserves that kind of money. So it'll be interesting to see what New York ends up doing. I don't think they want to just let him walk or anything, and I don't believe he's a free agent this offseason. Well, yeah, I guess he is. But yeah, so I don't think they want to let him walk, but they certainly don't want to pay him that much money. Like they think he's a valuable asset like I do as well, but they're trying to negotiate something here, and I don't blame them. So one final NFL topic here in the free agency market is Lamar Jackson. And it seems that he has kind of been alienated. Like everyone's forgetting the greatness of Lamar Jackson, Like I know the whole joke and meme about him being a running back is all fun and good, but like that man, in my opinion, I see a quarterback as someone who gets the ball every play and that helps your team win games and helps your offense be efficient. And I think Lamar does both of those. Although the games that I've watched against the Steelers, like I wouldn't attribute it to Lamar being poor or being bad. I would attribute it to the Steelers having a good game plan against him. But like he's an absolute nightmare to defend. Like he might be injury prone here and there, but at this point in the NFL, like who isn't? Like I don't think you can really hold back from signing a world-class talent like that just because of injuries. And I mean, that's a bit hypocritical of me to say, but in Lamar's case, I think the man's got to get paid. And Baltimore Ravens just franchise tagged him, I believe. It's going to be like $15-some million a season for next season for the franchise tag. And, I have nightmares every time I hear franchise tag because of Le'Veon Bell. I honestly, I'm not well-versed in NFL contracts enough to even know the ins and outs of what the franchise tag means, but I know in this case for Baltimore that just means they don't want to pay him right now, and they don't want to pay him long-term. But Lamar's, I would imagine, wants to go somewhere that will. So I wouldn't be I don't know. I would be a bit surprised if I see him traded this offseason, but, rumors are swirling around. I don't know what would be a good destination for him and what that would all entail, what package you would have to send for him, but I would love to see him go out of the AFC North so I don't have to face him. Well, not me personally, but the Steelers don't have to face him 2 times a season. All right, as previously mentioned, going to hop into some World Baseball Classic action here because it is just electric. So last night, I saw that the Czech Republic beat China. And that may not, at first glance, that might not seem like the end of the world, but I don't know that China's world-renowned for their baseball skills, but neither is the Czech Republic. The Czech Republic's team, I saw like a little 2-minute video on Twitter a few weeks ago, and it was like they were all saying like their day jobs and how many kids they have and a wife and all that, and I'm like, that's awesome. Like these men are just like plumbers and like trade workers, and they're out here just playing in the biggest baseball tournament in the world. Like that's awesome to me. There's just the fact that like this competition has the level of a Mike Trout, who could be considered, well, he probably is the best baseballer in MLB right now, but I've heard shouts of the most talented player of all time. So you have a guy like that, perennially millionaire baseball player. That man is God compared to most baseball players. And then you have a volunteer fireman that is just playing third base for the Czech Republic against Mike Trout. Like, that is awesome. But last night, they beat China in a stunning fashion. I saw that they came back in the 9th inning and absolutely stole a game from the Chinese. And that was in Japan, I might add. So they, their pool is Pool B, which is in Tokyo. And that contains Japan, who's 2-0, Australia, who's 1-0. They beat Korea the other night, which was kind of an upset. Korea's, pretty decently renowned for their baseball excellence. Czech Republic is 1-0. China is 0-2, and Korea is 0-2. So early stages of that pool, it seems as though China and Korea are going to exit, unfortunately for them. And the Czech Republic, I think it's going to be a fight with Australia for that second and final spot to move on. But in other brackets or other pools, the Netherlands are 2-0 after defeating Cuba. No, they beat Panama and Italy. Which Italy, I didn't know that they were well renowned for their baseball team either, but they have Matt Harvey on the squad. If that name sounds familiar, it's because he pitched for the New York Mets about 25 years ago. No, I'm kidding. It was about, I don't know, he had a really good prime about 5, 6, 7 years ago, and that man was a terror, and then he just kind of fell out of the league, which is unfortunate. But yeah, so the next two pools that have not gotten underway yet are what I'm super excited about. So we have Pool C, which is being played in Phoenix, Arizona, and that's Canada, Colombia, Great Britain, Mexico, and USA. So, the USA, as much as it seems like their team is absolutely stacked, like, they're not a lock to win this tournament by any means. Like, the Netherlands, super talented squad. I didn't realize that the Netherlands was well-renowned for their baseball, but boy, are they ever. And Japan is electric, man. Japan, their pitching is insane. They have Shohei Ohtani, Yu Darvish, and a couple other, I'll admit, I haven't exactly heard of these guys, but after seeing clips of them, man, I'm convinced. Like, their pitching staff is elite. Like, if you put their 5 starters and gave them an MLB season, like, I think they'd do some damage. But they have Shohei Ohtani to hit as well, and, like, it just seems like Japanese baseball culture. Like, they're all in, man. I love it. I love watching the games in the pool play, like, that are in Tokyo. The stadium just erupts. It's awesome. It's incredible. And Japan's been off to a super hot start. I forget the exact scores of their games earlier. I know they beat China like 9-1 in the first game, but they just played Korea, and I do believe they came out victorious. Well, I know they did, but yeah, so Japan uses dominant offense to put Korea on the ropes. So it looks like Japan... Oh, that's another player I wanted to talk about, was the St. Louis Cardinals outfielder Lars Nootbaar. And if you heard the name Lars Nootbaar, as I have a few times over this past couple weeks, the last nationality that I would think of for that name is Japanese. But his mother is emanating from Japan, wonderful woman, and, they take great pride in their Japanese heritage. And he decided, instead of playing for the USA, which, no disrespect to Lars, but he probably wouldn't have made that squad because of how good it is, he decided to play for Japan. And he is on a tear. He is leading it. He's leading off for the Japanese squad, and he is raking. So they won 13-4 against the South Koreans. So Korea had to lead, 3-0 lead into the bottom of the third inning. But Japan absolutely erupted from there, put up a 4 spot in the third, 2 more in the fifth, and then dropped 5 in the sixth and 2 more in the seventh. So Nootbaar was 2 for 4 and drove in a run. Kensuke Kondo made up for an early error in the game, and he ended up with 2 hits, a homer, and an RBI. Or 3 RBIs, excuse me. So yeah, they're just like they're one of those teams where like there's no egos, and I feel like that's just Japanese culture in general, or like baseball culture especially. It's like they are all for the team. Like I remember going to the Little League World Series as a child and just being mesmerized by the Japanese team's warm-ups. They were incredibly efficient and never one mistake, never one off throw at all. Like it was the most incredible sports experience I've ever had. And it was like kind of that moment I knew, like, everyone as a child, you play sports, you think you're going to the pros. Absolutely. You're like, well, no one's better than me. Absolutely. Like, I'm 8, 9 years old. Like, I'm the best baseball player on the planet. And, I took a trip to Williamsport, and I saw those gentlemen playing, and I had a quick change of perspective. I saw those gentlemen. I was like, well, hey, they're only about a year or two older than me, and they're absolutely lighting the world on fire. Like, they can field ground balls with their eyes closed and behind their back and throw it over to first with no problem. And I can barely do one of those three things with, nothing holding me back. So, once again, very off-topic segue there, but the Japanese baseball, long story short, they're just a well-oiled machine. Just the country in general and their baseball squad. So I'm excited, hopefully, that they play the USA or the Netherlands, because I'm really trying to see that. But the other favorites are the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico, who have not yet hit the field. And their pool is going to be an electric one, and that's in Miami. And that's Dominican Republic, Israel, Nicaragua, Puerto Rico, and Venezuela. So a lot of Latin teams there, and Israel, who, once again, this may be my ignorance showing here, but I'm not familiar with Israel's baseball prowess. So I'm very excited to see how they, end up performing. So that'll probably do it for the World Baseball Classic coverage here. And I'm like I said, I'm super excited to see how the rest plays out. It's almost not as exciting as the World Cup for me, but it hasn't been played for about 4 years. I think, well, maybe even longer than that. It was like I think it was 2019. So yeah, 4 years. But I don't know. It's just got a special feeling to it this year. Like, it's just genuinely, it's been a long time, and I think that it's going to be really exciting. And although they don't have the pitch count or the pitch clock in there, in the rule book for the World Baseball Classic, I feel like it just has more of a buzz to it anyway, so their games, like, they don't need that to draw in viewers, but I am a big fan of the MLB changing to the pitch clock, because even, like, going to a game nowadays, and don't get me wrong, like, I'm sort of a baseball purist myself, like, I don't want to change all the rules, but I am a huge, huge, huge fan of the whole pitch clock. I think it's just great for, I think players will adapt to it immediately. Like, I don't need to see players like jog around the batter's box 6 times in between pitches and then just to strike out on a slider in the dirt. Like, I just prefer to have a quick moving game. Like, I remember when I played baseball and like in Teener League, well, I guess the viewers would not know, the listeners would not know what Teener League is, but it was a local baseball league I played in when I was about 13 to 15 years old. And I remember a coach proclaiming that we needed to step out of the box more and, mix up our timings a little bit because the pitcher was pitching so fast, like in between pitches. So it's interesting to me that, like, whenever you first start out playing the game and, have your most love for it, you're playing fast. You can't wait to get that ball. The pitcher can't wait to throw his best stuff at you. And I think that, it'll just bring a more competitive edge to the game with, like, the players can't, or the batters can't really lose their focus in between pitches. They can't turn it off for a second and breathe. I think that's gonna maybe change some batting averages this year. Maybe batters will be more locked in. Maybe they'll be more tired. I don't know. I just like a variation. I think baseball has lost its luster a bit. Myself personally, I'm a Pirates fan, so regular season baseball is kind of just a kick in the face. But I'm excited for the Pirates' direction, first of all. But I also like to see the direction that baseball is going in of, adding some spice to these games. I still think they need to shorten the season and just in general. Like, I think 162 games is just too many. And then I hate that the playoffs, And like the World Series ends in like middle of November almost. And like, dude, like what happened to the October Classic or the October whatever? Like, I don't know. I feel like the whole playoffs should be over by the end of October, in my opinion. But, you know, everyone needs to make their money. I understand. But yeah, that's just my 2 cents. And, you know, since I'm here by myself, excuse me, I'm gonna give that 2 cents. So also, I saw on Twitter these past couple of days that Dylan Brooks and Draymond Green beef. I don't watch a whole lot of NBA. Not that I don't like it. It's just like, I don't know. It's a lot to keep up with, I feel. It's almost like a reality TV show, the NBA is, more than any other league. But I love it. It's very entertaining. It's just a lot to keep track of. But Dylan Brooks and Draymond Green had some beef on their respective. Well, Draymond Green has a podcast, and he really tore into Dylan Brooks. It was entertaining, but like it was almost unnecessary. I agreed with what Draymond said that like, you know, it's not the right time. You can't be talking if you don't have any credentials to talk. But you know, I think it was a little overblown, and I think that's like what happens a lot in the NBA. Excuse me, is just the drama, man. Like I feel like any other professional sports league, like I mentioned, like it just seems like they're always beefing with each other. There's always something. But let's see here. Excuse me, man. Got a frog in my throat or something. Not an actual frog, but there's something in there. And watched the Penguins game last night, and it seems to be a common trend for the Pens this year, but they lost a game 4-3 in overtime. And man, like they've got to have the most overtime, not just losses, but like games in the NHL this year. Like it just seems like anytime they have a lead or they're down, like they're the best team or one of the better teams in the NHL, at least from what I've seen, at starting a comeback and, you know, like getting back into games. But they're also one of the worst at giving up leads. Like they were up 3-1 last night against, oh boy, the Islanders, who they've had awful record against this year. And they were up 3-1, third period, Tristan Jarry in goal, not even Casey DeSmith, and they blew it. They lost 4-3 in overtime. And the night before, playing the Columbus Blue Jackets, who they have a huge lead on, and these are games that they need to win at this time of the season, and they barely won in overtime after being down, I think, 4-1. So they won 5-4 in overtime, if I'm not mistaken. So, like, as of right now, they're slated to play the Boston Bruins in the first round, and I don't see that working out well for the Penguins because they've had shaky success in the first round of playoff series. First round playoff series the past few seasons, and I don't see this season working out any better if they do indeed play the Boston Bruins because they are on an absolute tear. I hope it's like the President's Trophy curse with the Lightning a few years ago where they set like the record for points in a season and then lost to Columbus in the first round, but I don't see that happening. Not against Penguins. And I don't think Ron Hextall understands that like they need to win now because Crosby and Malkin are not getting any younger. Neither is Chris Letang. We're running out of money. The oldest roster in the league around Crosby and Malkin, who are already old themselves. I don't know if that's the right direction, Ronald. So, you know, I don't have a whole lot to say about that other than I'm not excited about the future of the Pens. That's why I'm trying to root for them so hard now. But I don't think Ron Hextall, like I mentioned, has the same thoughts, and he's kind of the one in charge. So, unfortunately, it is indeed 5 o'clock, 5:01 to be precise, here in Indiana. So, that'll do it for Sports Talk Live this afternoon. But thank you so much for tuning in. It was an absolute pleasure. I hope you're not tired of my voice, but you won't hear it for a week because we're on spring break here at IUP starting, I guess, tomorrow, whatever you want to say it. But Democracy Now! Is up next. Have a great weekend. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Matt Palumbo here on Sports Talk Live. You're listening to 90.1 WIUP FM.